exciting new journey slated out for you from this day onwards. 6 days of being steeped in art. Ladies and gentlemen, I promise you and I assure you that this will be an experience that you shall cherish. At our inaugural function today, we are privileged and honored to have with us Mr. Pradeep Mehra, the advisor to the administrator, Chandigarh administration. I welcome you, sir. We are also privileged to have with us Mr. Vinay Kumar of the Delhi and the National Lalit Kala Akademi. I welcome you too, sir. We, people of the Chandigarh Beautiful, like to welcome our guests, especially our honored guests, with flowers. May I request Mr. Vinay Kumar to please present a bouquet to our chief guest, Mr. Pradeep Mehra. I also request our chairman of the Chandigarh Lalit Kala Akademi, Mr. Dewan Mana, to welcome Mr. Vinay Kumar with the bouquet.
Very glad that we have Bharti Kher here, the main speaker. I would like to welcome her with a bouquet too.
May I request Mr. Dewan Mana to please introduce our artist for the day.
I welcome you all here, and I welcome Shri Pradeep Mehra ji, who's been the guiding spirit for all the academies of the administration in Chandigarh. He's always been supporting us. The entire administration has been supporting us. We are thankful to the administration. I welcome you, Bharti. Bharti, as we all know, is very, very busy. Always, one leg here, one there, one in the airport, one in a studio, one in a museum, one in a gallery. And this idea was conceived with a particular point, because Chandigarh is a city which we all know. Corbusier, who planned this city, it is in itself an experiment in urban planning and architecture. At the beginning of the century, when new mediums were being explored for architecture, except for bricks and tuna and cement and stone, Corbusier was thinking of using this RCC thing. So, in a city which is based upon an experiment, which in itself was a new medium of architecture, the festival of new media, I think it gels with Chandigarh. It is a very receptive city. It is a city which is open to new ideas, new experimentation. We are all used to seeing sculpture like being sculpted in metal, in stone, in wood, or terracotta, various other mediums of expressing through this three-dimensional medium. We've also seen painting being painted on canvas, or drawings being made on paper, or prints being made on paper. As the societies grow, as the human mind grows, we've seen scientists, mathematicians, dancers, musicians, writers, painters, they all reflect upon the contemporary times, what our requirements are, how do we look at this world, how do we perceive this world, how do we want to make this world more understanding, more understandable, more beautiful, more aesthetic, more comprehensible. New media represents that. These younger, comparatively younger lot of artists whom we have invited, they are all most significant signatures of new media art from our country. They have all come to light in the last, I think, almost 20 years or so, after the economic liberalization of the country. Now, they represent the country everywhere, all the biennials, triennials, the best museums in the world, their collections are there. If you think or talk in terms of money, their works go for millions, which is in itself a kind of a proof that Indian art has arrived. I hope and wish that all of us learn, because unfortunately, in our part of the world, we have grown with looking at calendar art or religious art. I hope this festival, this event helps us all develop our ideas, understand those ideas, comprehend those ideas. Thank you so much, everybody. Now I invite Shri Pradeep Mehra ji to share his thoughts with us.
The first thing that I want to say is that this academy is doing a wonderful job. And he's been doing a wonderful job for the last 2 years, and so have been the chairpersons of the other 2 academies. About 2 years ago, I had spoken to some friends of mine, including Alka Pande. I was at that time relatively new in the town, and I was given the task of making a selection. And I wanted to make a selection that would be good for the people of the town. So ultimately, with their inputs, I finally literally hit the jackpot. And I selected Diwan and Manju Jedka and Kamal Tiwari, and they've done a wonderful job for the town. And as a result of that, I've been practically forced to recommend to the governor for their extension for another 2 years, which he has kindly agreed to. Coming to this particular subject of the new media, which I would like to hear a little more about, the point that I wanted to make was that over a period of time, what actually happens, I am told, is that there are movements in art or in poetry, literature. There are movements. After 30 or 40 years, 25 or 30 years, there is a change in thinking and the world moves on. And as there is a change in thinking and as the world moves on, there are fresh perceptions, and that gives rise to new schools of thought. New schools of thought in philosophy, new schools of thought in poetry. You had the Romantics, and after that you had before that you had the classical poets, and then there is modernism, and then there is postmodernism, and then there's impressionism. So every 25 or 30 years there's a change. And then every 25 or 30 years or 40 years, and much more rapidly in the 20th century, there have been change in technology also. There's been change in technology also. So what has happened is that with the change in technology, there are new forms in art, new forms in media, new forms which reflect the thinking of the day, And what we have seen, especially in the 20th century, has been the rise of the birth of the camera, And like the telephone, the camera has been one of those very highly disruptive technologies that have evolved in the 20th century. And over a period of time, it seems to me that it's become an art form. I don't remember exactly whose exhibition it was. It was probably Manju Jedka's or someone's, who had called me for an exhibition of her photographs. It was Dr. Vyas, Rajneesh Vyas, had given an exhibition of photographs which he had taken in Europe and in America. And frankly, I don't know much about photography, but it seems to me that some of those photographs were really very good. So I'm glad that in India also, this new forms of media have developed and are evolving, and that we are throwing up civil society in Chandigarh, in Delhi, in North India, in South India, in the entire country. And indeed in the entire world is throwing up these new artists in India, throwing up these new artists. We have with us Bharti Kher, who is going to give us a talk on this particular subject. And I'm very happy that these movements are evolving and developing in India as well. And it's appropriate, and I think it's timely that we discussed this and learnt about this sitting here in Chandigarh. Now, I would like to spend 5 or 10 minutes telling you about the developments that are taking place in the field of aesthetics. But I don't think I'll do that because we are waiting impatiently to hear her. And I'll just end my little talk by thanking you very much for coming here and thanking you very much for calling me to this particular workshop and to have this workshop here and to educate all of us in Chandigarh about these very exciting new forms. Thank you very much.
The whole concept was developed and then reached the level of execution at the level of the National Lalit Kala Akademi in Delhi. Its head, we all know, Shri Ashok Vajpayee, who is the chairman of the National Lalit Kala Akademi. With his help, with the help of the secretary of the National Lalit Kala Akademi, Mr. Sudhakar Sharma, and we have Mr. Vinay Kumar with us, who is the deputy secretary. With the help of all three of them, this festival has been possible. And you will be very happy to know that we are only the hosting agency here. We are not spending a single penny on this entire festival. The entire funding is being done by the National Lalit Kala Akademi, for which we are thankful to Vinay Kumarji, thankful to Mr. Ashok Vajpayee, thankful to Mr. Sudhakar Sharma, who have thought of Chandigarh as one of the cities where this kind of festival could take place. Thank you. And I must thank them in advance that they have also given us 1 lakh rupees of grant for publishing a catalogue for the upcoming annual art exhibition of Chandigarh Lalit Kala Akademi. Thank you so much for that also. And we have many other things planned in the future with the collaboration of the National Lalit Kala Akademi in Chandigarh, maybe some workshops also. Along with this discussion on the new media, we also have an exhibition going on which will be opened after this talk here in the gallery of the museum, which is from the collection of the National Lalit Kala Akademi workshops paintings. You're all welcome to have a look at those paintings as well. Thank you so much. Now I give the stage to Iqbalji.
Dislocation, transience, being on the move. We men and women have experienced this at some point of time or the other. The bindi, most of us know it as the vermilion dot on the forehead that traditionally signifies the Sohagan, the tiny black circle that wards off the evil eye. We are also familiar with the concept of the third eye and that of bindu, that can be nullity, the void, or the circle, the mandal. However, it is in the mindscape of the artist that these familiar concepts and experiences are transformed and portrayed in their multi-dimensional complexity. Thus it is with Bharti Kher, the itinerant artist, born in London in the late 60s, whose calling drew her first to the Middlesex Polytechnic and thence to the Newcastle Polytechnic in England, where she graduated in fine art painting with honours in 1988. Delhi became her base in the 90s, from where she flits across the world, experiencing life in all its diversity and showcasing her works in solo and group exhibitions at prestigious art centres. Home as the location of identity and culture is constantly challenged in her work. Her questioning spirit relentlessly examines her own identity, right down to its evolutionary beginnings from simian ancestors. Thus too it is with the bindi. Bharti Kher uses it as a powerful tool to reflect her critique of contemporary life, class and consumerism in urban India. Interrogating the relationship between the traditional and the modern, Bharti makes the bindi transcend its mass-produced diminutiveness to become a powerful stylistic and symbolic device, depicting at one moment custom, often inflexible, at another moment the dynamic ways of its consumption and use today, and in yet another a dazzling multi-layered visual display, the nemesis of nations. Similarly, bindis, innumerable, form swirls of design and color in her menagerie of resin-cased animals, notably the elephant. An artist such as Bharti is free-spirited and cannot be confined to one medium. Her creative energy spills across a diverse range of media: digital photography, sculpture, paintings, installations. Recipient of the Sanskriti Award in 2003, her artworks have graced major solo and group exhibitions in Delhi, Bangalore, Mumbai, New York, London, Paris, Seoul, Tokyo, and Lucerne at venerable art museums. The quirky, arresting titles of her exhibitions point to her ironic interrogative stance. Hungry dogs eat dirty pudding. An absence of assignable cause. Do not meddle in the affairs of dragons because you are crunchy and taste good with ketchup. Virus, and most recently, a solo exhibition held in May this year at Hosser and Worth, London, titled Inevitable, Undeniable, Necessary, which is what one would say of Bharti Kher's presence in the art arena. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Bharti Kher.
First, I'd just like to say thank you very much to the Chandigarh Lalit Kala Akademi for having me here, and for this wonderful organization. Thank you. I would like to start my presentation. I didn't really want to start showing you my work necessarily chronologically. I wanted to walk you through a series of exhibitions that I've been making over the past, say, since 2007 to early 2006 to 2010, purely because I think that when you look at my work, some people could see it as quite frenetic, maybe. It's going through many different mediums and many different strings, and there's lines attached, and there seems to be threads that don't kind of mix, or they don't really take you anywhere. But there's a kind of, for me, there's a kind of constancy in the questions that I ask. For me, art is a journey. It's almost like I want to start basically and read you a text from Milton from Paradise Lost, where this is, in a sense, how when I approach my work and when I look at all the things that I'm interested, nature, the ideas of hybridity, the way that we live in the world today, the way that human beings now fight nature, the way that we live in cities, the way that we're so awkward and fragile at the same time, we can be so cruel and so very tender at the same time. If you just bear with me. John Milton, Paradise Lost, Book 2. Into this wild abyss, the womb of nature, and perhaps her grave, of neither sea, nor shore, nor air, nor fire, but all these in their pregnant causes mixed confusedly, and while thus must ever fight, unless the Almighty make them ordain his dark materials to create more worlds. Into this wild abyss the weary fiend stood on the brink of hell and looked a while, pondering his voyage. Over the years, you'll see how over the years, when you start to see the works as they go through, you'll see how over the years I've tried to look at the idea of the house, the home, how objects and players in that space negotiate the awkwardness and fragility of those spaces, and how the threads that run through the landscape, wall decoration, repetition. When I begin usually with any exhibition or a new body of work, many of the times it starts with the space. I decide where I'm going to show. I look at, I decide in the process in which I want to begin the work. And naturally, I mean, obviously a lot of the times all the spaces are obviously different. They're different sizes, they have different histories. For me, the most important thing is the history of the place. And I think as an artist, it's something, it's the way that I approach the work. Process is very important to me in terms of how I begin the work. I've been collecting objects for a very, very long time. I think it's just part of my personality. I collect things. I collect teacups. I buy fabrics. I go to antique shops. I collect chairs. I don't really know why I collect them. I think that I have this innate belief that an object is infused with the history of the people that have used it. And so for me, conceptually, that becomes an interesting beginning for works, in the same way that every gallery has a history of space, whether it's 100 years or 10 years old. And so Houser and Worth, London. Houser and Worth, London is a Lutyens building, interestingly. And it was built in the 1800s by Edward Lutyens as a bank. And about the same time, I mean, this is before he came to India. So when I first approached the space, it was for me, I've been in India since 1992, and to go back to London and have my first solo show in Houser and Worth, London, was really quite a calling and quite a homecoming. I thought nicely ironic that it was designed by the same, this building was designed by the same person who has such a strong and long history in India. This is the installation view. When I first saw the space, I thought to use it as a, and perhaps look at the space as a landscape, and to then, I'm trained as a painter. So I still have this, I still, when I look at three-dimensional objects, I put them in a picture frame, put something around it, and almost like take a photograph in my mind's eye. So when I actually was thinking about the show, I put a house, a mountain, a tree, and put some pictures on the wall, so you have a landscape within a landscape. And in a lot of my work, you'll find this idea of a picture within a picture, this of something in the same fashion. This work is called In the Presence of Nothing. The mountain is about 15 feet high. You can see it's been cut right down the middle, and you can't really enter it. When I think about an exhibition, it's an experience that you enter a space, and I want you to, when you enter the space, you enter it fully. So I try and control the way. So when I see this door, all I want to do is put something in front of it, so that you walk around and you enter the space. Nothing greater than this great mountain that actually is a bit of a folly. I mean, it's huge, it's cumbersome, it's cut down the middle, it has no function, it's not really supposed to be there. And it's completely, from the inside, it's completely black, very matte, so it's almost like there's nothing there. To move a mountain, I take a lot of my narrative. My work is insanely narrative. I make lots of stories up for myself. I think it keeps me interesting, because I like to read a lot, and it then helps me let the work do its own job, which is, when it's out there, you just sort of let it go and let other people come in with their ideas. But for me, when I say I move a mountain, for me it's almost an act of freedom. And to then take a folly, I mean, to make a folly, and in a sense art is an act of folly. And an act of folly is an act of absolute freedom based on nothing except itself. And for me, being an artist and making art is really, for me, it is an act of freedom. And I have always taken that journey, that I walk this path, referring back to my own practice, going back to my own library of images, and I don't need to have any necessarily time-based coherence through my work. You will find I'm going to go actually backwards for you, from 2010 all the way back. And you will see things that are from 1992 that you'll see now in 2010, but those things, I always feel that they belong to me. So I constantly refer to my own practice. This piece was called Contents. These are medical charts. I found them in a shop in London, and they are medical charts of the abnormalities of labor for women. And they were made in the 40s as technical teaching tools for doctors. And when I found them, they're extremely beautifully drawn. And of course, the paper was yellowed, and they're stuck on canvas. Exquisitely drawn. I will show you the details. Now, the first page says the contents. And what happens with, I work with the bindi, as most people know. So the bindi now starts to function as a cover, as a skin. It starts to layer over, and when it starts to play with text, which is the first time I'd say I've done something like this, what was interesting was that I'm covering everything with bindis, and you can read everything. So it's like a mask again. It's like the ideas of the skin that I use, which I'll talk about a little bit later when I get to other works. So you see on the left, abnormalities of the child. So you have the cleft lip. I mean, the thing is, some of the photographs were extremely violent and in a sense quite macabre. no, I won't say violent. They're not violent. They were used as technical teaching aids. And I mean, for me, it's interesting because you see, in a sense, how far, say, science and progression has actually taken us. That women are not put up with their legs on the back of a, you know, on the end of a bed somewhere. But this is one piece. Now, the second piece in this show, which is the house, this piece, okay, I'll show you the details. So basically it's a room. When I first found this work, I thought it was a confession room. And so for a very long time, I would go inside and confess. And by kind of interacting with your own work, I mean, I think that a lot of the time, as an artist, you're in communion with your own objects in a way. You talk to them, you ask questions of the objects itself. What are you going to be? Who do you want to, who are you? What are you saying to me? Are you trying to communicate something to me? So I'm in a confession room, and I'm looking at the inside of this box, and I decide that I will cover the inside of the box with the bindis. And in a way, it was like, the bindis then start to function as, we know that for me why I started using the bindis was because I was interested in this conceptual underpinning that today you can put on your third eye and you can take it off at the end of the day and stick it on a mirror, and that has now this one object in which you instill a certain degree of faith, which is really what art is all about anyway. We just instill faith in an object and we believe it to be something else. So you instill some faith in an object, and perhaps today you can see better than you did yesterday. And today perhaps you can communicate with someone that you'll never be able to do yesterday, and maybe you see more. So I have always asked myself, so what am I seeing? So the actual act of seeing is something that's quite important to my own work. How do we look at the things that we see every day or we encounter every day, if we then present them and we just flip them slightly, we just subvert them slightly, we just transform them slightly? That's what art is, that's what I do. So this confession room, and interestingly enough, about 3 days before the opening, a friend of mine from South India came to the show and she said, "Oh, you do know that's a bridal chamber, don't you?" And it was for me, it was such a actually beautiful transformation of the own work. My own misinterpretation and my own misunderstanding of certain things adds in familiarity to my own practice. So you have to allow it then to transform, for it to be a bridal chamber. So that the idea that is that the woman will sit inside from a Brahmin society. She sits inside because she's not able to then necessarily be close to other people, is also quite an odd thing for me to understand. But she would sit inside, and I'm wondering then, as the matriarch, because now she is the matriarch, as they are in South when you get married. So then she would sit inside, and what would you do inside this place? So in a way, this work it has a light bulb that hangs inside, because actually the work is very dark inside. You are not allowed to enter the work. So in a way, this show in Hauser and Wirth was about inside, outside. You have the mountain that you can't enter, that has been moved. You have the room that you can't go into, but you look in from the windows. The contents are pictures of pregnancies, and I cover it with the bindis, almost like a balm, almost like plasters, that you heal then, in a way, the image itself. So if you think that each one is one day in the life of one person, or one day in the life of one woman, you have many things to share, but you don't really have to share them. I don't always. This was the piece where I tried to, in a sense, relate to the space. Now, material is something that's very important to me. I'm quite traditional in the way that I approach making art, in that I'm very aware of form, weight, things like material. So the gallery is all wooden. It has this beautiful old feeling of parquet floors. So I was like, when I saw the bridal chamber, then I was Okay, so this is working with the floor, and I wanted to get this sense of material that runs through the show. In a way, those visual puns, they bind, they're as binding as they are as conceptual ideas. So this is a pillar, it's a very traditional a pillar, and these are banana leaves up here, and they've come from my garden in my studio, and they have just cast, they're the real banana leaves, just cast in resin. This piece is about 26 foot tall. The gallery is extremely voluminous. It's like a big cavern. It's 28 feet tall, and I really wanted a work that's almost going to touch the ceiling, so that you have this sense of the landscape that you look across. If you see right at the top there, you see this little stick, black thing coming out there. Go. You go up the stairs, you get to see the space from upstairs. And here in that space, there's a rocking horse. And this rocking horse rocks, basically. It rocks all the time. And she has the horn of a unicorn. And for me, this is a unicorn, and what she's doing is she's marking the passing of time. So from downstairs in the show, through that window, you have this constant tick backwards and forwards. It's like a marking of time. The horses refers back to my earlier works where I've looked at hybrid animals, things that come together, the mythological, the gargoyle, the creature of legend, the creature of myth, and it's something that you'll see recurring through my practice. Downstairs they have a vault in the gallery, which is actually a very interesting little room, and it's where the safe is and where all the gold used to be kept. This is a Tibetan singing bowl, and when I first saw this vault, I knew that I wanted to make a sound piece down there, because every time you speak, it echoes. So I was like, I should really make a sound piece. And so we spent about a year developing the singing bowl. And this bowl will sing. I don't have a video, sadly, but I really should make one. So basically, this mechanism is like it's like the hand of the monk. And the bowl sings constantly and stops. And if you've heard a singing bowl, it really is quite a fantastic sound. It really fills the entire space with a kind of, I don't know, this work in a way is like, in a sense, my work is an attempt to start the world again, that you stop it and you start it. It's like a myth and a ritual, the same way that some of the works or some of the things that I do have a kind of shamanistic value. And you're trying to speak a language that you don't really understand, but you know the sound. So we all know the sound, but we don't really know what the sound is saying to us, but we know it. You go upstairs to a room called the American Room. These are 16 mirrors. 16 mirrors, and all these mirrors are smashed. So I spent really a good time breaking all of them, actually. I had really loads of fun. And then, of course, what was interesting here for me was that when I was breaking them, even people in my studio who worked, they were like, Matt, you really shouldn't be doing that. It's really bad karma for you. And I kept saying, well, what's your problem? It's my karma and I've taken it. So what is your problem? If you haven't done it and I have done it for you, then here again we talk about this idea of belief, this idea of faith. If you decide that something is the way you wish it to be, if I decide today that this is art, in a way what the bindis again are doing on these we're breaking the mirror and then I'm repairing them. I'm breaking them, then I'm repairing them. And through the work, this work is called Indra's Net. So it just goes on and on and on, and you will never, within the floor and the ceiling, the idea was that you make an entire room where all you see is the mirrors, and all you see is a reflection of the mirrors, and all you see is yourself. So when you stand in the middle, you see, you find yourself again and again. There's an outdoor piece, there's a garden work. This work is called Choleric, Phlegmatic, Melancholy, Sanguine. It is the four humours it's the four humours from ancient texts from the 4th century of how the body was perhaps made up, and what they believe to be yellow bile, white, black blood. I've got it written down somewhere, I'll tell you. I've made over a series of years some sculptures, many sculptures of women, and they're kind of, for me, they're all kind of urban goddesses. They're all based from a very my rendering of a kind of fictitious goddess who takes something from here, she takes something from here, and she takes something from here, and she mixes it all up together, and you get then the perfect cyborg, in a way. So I then create the most powerful, but also most fragile, because here she's the three-headed. Another thing, you see many triptychs and trilogies and such things in my work, and it's because I really can't make up my mind, and that really is the truth. So I don't know whether it's left or right or in the middle. So if you have three, then maybe somewhere something is going to fall right. So you'll see many three-headed, you'll see many pairs, and it's really about this and that, one or the other. Neither is right, neither is wrong. She carries with her the sacrifice, I suppose, but this sacrifice is, she's quite ecstatic and really, in a way, very sexual and willing in many ways. It's like you go forward, and when you take something with it, you have to sacrifice something and leave it behind. This is why she's behind her. Go back to 2008. Sing to them that will listen. When I look at materials, I look at them first for their intrinsic value. For me, the ready-made, like I said before, already has its own narrative, its own history. Things that then become, such as, say, the bangle. After I was looking at, I'm looking at the bindis, then I start to look at the bangle, and I understand that the red bangle then has all this association with whatever, but I'm looking at it as an object of glass. This brickwork is called the butcher, the baker, the candlestick maker, and this is a project actually that's been going on since 2001, and I'm now actually finishing the last work, the biggest piece that I've made from there. A lot of my ideas sit with me for years and years in my studio because I don't really know what to do with them, and so these bricks are made out of burnt bangles. So I buy the bangles and then I burn them into bricks. And so it's very important for me that the material is exactly right. This piece is a furnace, really, and it was made after Ayodhya, and hence the title. The piece in the background is I Never Saw You for What You Really Are panel, and I mix when I make exhibitions, I put, it really is about an experience, how you experience the different the facets of my practice. I don't ever see them as separate. I see them all as one, and I think the only way you really understand my work is when you see it in my own exhibition, to be totally honest. And so again, like I was saying, when I consider a space, every piece, in a sense, is made for the experience. So when you walk through this work, the first thing that you see is this woman. This is the Warrior Woman. She was made in 2008, 7 and 8. Over a period of, say, 6 years, I've made about 6 or 7 women sculptures, and they all deal with the they're all kind of hybrids, super, but almost very tender, and actually quite very fragile in a way. She's really huge, and she's not really going anywhere because she's carrying this huge burden with her horns, and she kind of looks like she's very powerful, but there's this kind of fragility of the banana leaf that covers her and her modesty. So with her kind of, this is the back, although she carries prowess, there's the other side of it that she's very cumbersome. The shirt that's hanging off her horns again goes back to the constant reference that I make to the domestic space. That the domestic space is a space fraught with fragility, awkwardness, violence, sexuality, power. You know, I don't always, I look very little out, I look very often in, and sometimes the small spaces for me are much more interesting. They tell me a lot more about my own practice and the things that I want to look at, and myself actually. Now, the piece in the back is called De Novo. It means new. In the second room, you see 3 works here. I'll go through each of them for you. This piece is called Make No Mistake. It's the bindis function now as markers, and they can do so many things now because they're mine. And over the years, just by using them, I've kind of made this material mine. And now they can function without you understanding or without me having to explain that they mean this or that they mean this or that they mean this. They can start to allude to surface. They can start to allude to typographical maps. They can start to look like journeys. They can start to look like ideas. So when you have Make No Mistake, it's white on white, and then you get the black. It's about imperfection. It's about impurity. There is this constant thing. Also, there's a trajectory in my work that you will never see a perfect made figure. I will always make it look like it's made. It's not that I'm trying to give you something that you know already, and I'm not trying to make reality. I'm not trying to create reality at all. What I'm trying to do is maybe re-look at some of the signs or the symbols that we're actually looking at, slightly reinvent them, and then throw them back to myself to say, okay, now what is it? Because art really is a construct, and that's what I'm interested in. I'm actually interested in constructing it. So you will always see the joins. You will never, a lot of the time my sculptures are not painted, or if they are, they're not painted to be real, or, yeah. So make no mistake, there's lots of mistakes. And this is called, And All the While the Benevolent Slept. It is based on a Chinnamasta painting from the 18th century. And it's the story of Mayama, the creation, where somebody writes that they see a very beautiful woman pregnant with child, and she walks into the river to bathe. She comes out, gives birth to a child, carries it tenderly, nurses it, devours the child, goes back into the river, and there starts the cycle of life again. When I read this, I was quite horrified. I just thought that's absolutely horrifically violent. And then there's just something actually quite beautiful about it. And I also was intrigued by why I only found maybe 1 or 2 of these kind of images of this incredible, powerful sexuality, even when Kali is in union with Shiv. How come we're seeing this? So I started to look more, and you don't find it maybe kind of in a way the 19th century and the 20th century middle class morality decides that goddesses don't do it. So, and I'm again making these women who are real. They're really real. They're me. They're you. They're all the women that I know. They're all the so she's creating and destroying the world while the benevolent slept, and this is what she does. And you'll see the recurring the teacups. The teacups and the ceramics that I use, where I break them, I stick the teeth on them. I like tea, and I collect tea sets. Actually, I have lots of tea sets. If you ever rubbed your teeth against ceramic, it's really not very nice. Funnily, the copper wire that's actually coming out of her head, it was only because I was trying to work out how do I get blood gushing out of her head and make it look real. And it was a complete disaster, and actually maybe this works better anyway. This piece is called Sing to Them That Will Listen. It's, well, you can see it's a marble plinth with a gold bowl. These are like what? Lots, 100,000 pieces of rice, and I've been collecting the matrimonial columns for about 10 years. I don't really know why, and I think I've made a lot of works based on the idea of the matrimonials. Some of the titles, An Absence of Assignable Cause, Sing to Them That Will Listen, Strange Encounters. I've done paintings. You see, we in a way, let's go back to this. These rice grains are taken from a single edition of the Hindustan Times matrimonial columns, and every single word is copied onto the grains of rice, and they're put in a bowl. So, you turn the labor of something, you turn that massive of sleight of hand, which is really the sleight of hand when you're writing all these things. Of course, I work with a team, and you turn it back into the very simple bowl of rice, which is really like the most basic of all our needs. And in the same way, love and the way that people look for each other is really one of the most basic of needs, companionship, and the strangest ways that human beings do this. In a way, your aspirations, what are your aspirations? What are the things that you want in your life? What are the things that we're looking for? I ask myself these things, but I also get, I get a lot of it from the people that I observe and I see. This piece is called Dead Ruler. It was in the back room. The piece on the wall at the back is Virus. It's a bindi installation that's made on the wall. This is also another work that I've made repeatedly over, say, 4 or 5 years. It's like I used it as an antithesis in the same space to get that sense of landscape, to get that sense of a space within a space, so that you actually go out of the space. I don't know if that makes sense. Okay, Dead Ruler, you can see it's like, this work is almost like you're capturing a moment in time. The chair is just about to fall over. It balances, why I say I'm interested in balance, I play around with these things until I get it absolutely right, that the chair doesn't fall over, the skeleton doesn't fall over, but all the weight is absolutely in equilibrium. So there's an absolute constant. There is no way this work is going to fall over. And he has with him the conch and the shell that's on the floor, and they're beautiful conches because you can always hear the sea in them. But this is a life-size replica of a male gorilla made in resin, and it's you have the sense that it was tied to the chair. But actually, something so beautiful about the arc of the back. In 2008, I did a show in the Baltic in the UK. It's a special project for the space, and I'm looking at the space. You can see I'm looking at the space in quite a traditional manner. It's just if you understand how the landscape functions and how the picture functions, or how three-dimensional objects work against, say, looking at a painting where you're within a two-dimensional space, you have a very fixed, and I'm almost doing the same thing, because when I get a cube, I don't know why I do it. I just instinctively turn it into a painting. I don't really know why I do it. And so we have here on the left the first time that I made the tree, and it's called Solarium Series. Solarium Series, the title came from an idea that there's a plant called Solaris, and it basically what it does is it goes into previously inhabited places and completely takes over and wipes out other species. So it's like a weed. It's like the great cuckoo who comes in, takes the eggs, chucks everything else out, and then becomes like king, queen, and it's about a kind of natural domination that happens. Then I started to look at. I was looking at trees of life. I mean, obviously, you look at the tree of life. When you make a tree, you can't not. I came across also an 18th century. 18th century Persian miniature, maybe 17th century Persian miniature of the wak tree. And the wak tree was, I'll just go to the next image. The wak tree was a tree, a legendary tree, a shamanistic tree, a foreseer of the future that Alexander the Great was told to visit on his conquests across Persia, across Iran, and across over to Asia and the Punjab. So he was told, apparently he went, his advisors would tell him, and he was told that he would never make it to India and he would never make it across the Punjab, which of course he didn't. Now this tree had the heads of gargoyles, animals, humans, and all these different creatures that had all the powers of all the different animal worlds, and all the head of an eagle would be able to foresee flight. And so, you know, history is full of myth, and I'm a great reader of mythology, and I think it provides me with a lot of my imagery. I think it provides me with a lot of things to take off from, and then I just bring them back into our time. Now, interestingly, the fallen tree that you see in the background, actually it was standing at the beginning of the exhibition, 2 days before the show, and well, it's not funny because I really did cry, and this was a rather large standing tree, and 3 hours before the opening it fell over. And so of course, sometimes what happens is, you, quite by accident, wonderful things happen, and you create, I don't really know, you create something better. So this tree, when it did fall over, I kind of said to, I called Saul up crying, saying, oh, my tree's fallen over, what am I going to do? He said, acha lag raha hai ki nahi? So I said, haan, theek to lag raha hai. He said, then leave it. So the standing tree became a fallen tree, and subsequently, okay, I have to talk about this. I'll just show you quickly. Subsequently, 4 years later, I made my version of the fallen tree in Art Unlimited in Basel, which was much larger. And of course, what we did do with this tree was that when it was standing and when it was ready, we actually pushed it down and we made it break. So that, and then we had to reinforce it again so it became stable, because the other one, of course, was destroyed. Okay, this piece here was the panel work. This piece was called Semantic Cell Nuclear Transfer. It's the precise moment in time of a kind of nuclear fusion where two different cells basically create then the third, and become then something completely different. So this constant thing of hybridity of the way, so when I make these panel pieces, I'm thinking about structure, and I'm thinking about form, I'm thinking about how then your eye travels across and you get this great big black line in the middle that just stops it all. And maybe that's the part of kind of impact. So this was the fallen tree, the wak tree. And here you have details. All of these heads were made in my studio. We had a team of, and everybody, we had a lot of fun making these over about 3 months, because it was everybody's challenge to not repeat themselves. So we were all like in competition. Have you seen my head? What's that? That's that. And none of them was supposed to be anything that you ever recognize. So you can't make a dog, you can't make a cat, you can't make a crocodile. You have to make something that's a cross between somebody and something. So, you know, even my kids were part of this. So we all, and there on this tree there are about 5,500 different heads. Virus. And again, there's always that in even the virus works. It's basically although they start with this thing of you repeat the same thing again and again and again. Some of the bindi works now start to form. They start to look like codes. They start to be like texts. So that somewhere in amongst all there's a kind of imperfection. 2007. Of Bloodlines and Bastards. Well, if you know, Delhi is a really great city and also extremely complicated city, and in a way, of Bloodlines and Bastards is really about the two kinds of people, or the different types of people that live in cities, and how people are actually in many ways connected, or how those connections are not connected. So it's you either have the bloodline or you don't. So this work then starts to become like veins of a body through the body. So again, it talks about the bastard, talks about the virus, it talks about the one that's not quite required, but sometimes that for me is the lifeblood. It really is the hybrid, the things that are not supposed to be there, the people that are not quite fitting into how you wish to see the world, the ones who annoy you, who are a little bit more radical, who make decisions and take risks. So that work is it was about that. This shows in New York. You have at the end here the third series of tea set works. Like I said, over the years I've been collecting tables, chairs, tea sets. You will see here on the bottom, that's a pile of old newspapers. It is the matrimonial columns for 4 years, every single one of them from half the newspaper, and the other half are there. So you will have, it's like a chronicle. And for me, it's really important that there's no cheating. You know, there just can't be, because I can't bring myself to allow. So it really is every single one. And before they go away, they've been kept over a period of years and tied up, because this piece was called Another Strange Encounter. The first piece I made was called The Girl with the Hairy Lips Said No, and it was about the tea ceremony, and how within a tea ceremony, how people make encounters with people that they don't know. And often those encounters are awkward and strange. They can be beautiful, and you can form friendships. But at the same time, this specific one was about meeting someone based on my experiences from, say, people that I know, or my own family, or people like that, of how they are kind of subjected to strange interrogations during prospective bride-groom meetings. So the first one, so this is the second one, it's called Another Strange Encounter. Like the chair that's almost fallen over, there's always this kind of sense of slight imbalance. In here you have the whale heart in 2007, about just after I made the elephant. I started to think about the largest organ of any mammal is actually the heart of the blue sperm whale. And it's actually the size of a car. So when I read that, the image just came up into my mind. It was quite beautiful. I was like, my God, you make a heart the size of a car. Okay, now I'm going to make a heart the size of a car. So I spent about 6 or 7 months researching. It was like a search for a chimera. I could not find a picture. And then we began this internet search, telephone conversations, calling up the Natural History Museum in Australia, London, America, New Zealand, Tokyo, everywhere, sent emails, lied, said we were teachers, said we were students, said we were doing research projects, said I was a doctor. Nobody could send me an image. And eventually, after 9 months, I got a line drawing from a friend of mine who knew someone who worked in the Maritime Museum in New Zealand, where they do a lot of whale research. And they said, your typical blue sperm whale heart does not survive for longer than 3 hours after the whale dies, which is why nobody really has any record of it. It either floats to the bottom of the ocean, or if it comes ashore, its internal organs combust within 35 minutes because of the weight of the... So they said, but we can tell you it's a double chamber, very similar to a human, and its aorta, a small child could crawl through it. So based on that and a few line drawings, I made the whale heart. And it's covered in bindis. And, you know, when I was thinking about this kind of organ floating around aimlessly without a whale in the sea, like this great heart, like a big carbuncle that kind of floats at the bottom of the ocean. The skin speaks a language not its own. This piece was made in 2006. It's a female. She's a dying elephant. I think this work has been spoken or talked about. I'd like to say what I'd like to speak about this work, because if I were to see my practice in terms of a covering of, or say, of something like a self or an inquiry into substance or vehicle or metaphor, I think the elephant has been probably one of the successful pieces. In life, the skin kind of serves to function as a cover, to maintain, in a way, the integrity of the body. And this is where the bindis have really started to work on an object. To then carry the bindis like this. I'll go for details, hold on. Yeah, so the sperm bindi, the sarp bindi, they become like, it's like a text that runs over the body. The elephant is really one of the most fantastic animals, and they have memories as long as we do. I mean, they actually remember from the age of 1. They remember their families. They can hear over distances of 250 kilometers. They instinctively, they know when they're going to die. They don't trouble. They just go. They disappear. They are a matriarchal society in many ways. So this elephant was really like, and the bindis are served like a skin to talk about the life. It's like a palimpsest of sub-layering, of layering again, of talking about. At the same time, this is such a huge beast, and she's dying, and she's sinking, absolutely sinking into the floor. And suddenly, what these bindis do, these white bindis, is that they make her fly, because she becomes so light. And she's so light, she's like, she flies. They're very tender animals. The eye of an elephant is just slightly bigger than a human eye, not really much bigger. And so you can... misdemeanors. This is in the other room, around the corner. Misdemeanors is comes from a... I've been making animals for a very long time. Some of them are like, say, the elephant, or parts of animals, or parts of the bodies of animals, or hybridized animals. Sometimes the humans become half animal. Sometimes the animals become part human. And in a way, what happens is that the human beings take on the animalistic tendencies to kind of, I don't know, bring a kind of sense of empathy, I suppose. That's why I do it. And the animals, when they take on humanistic, I don't know, emotions, it's to kind of show us for what we are, really. And I think I'm quite clear about that. In a way, too, when I've given a lot of times skins of other animals to different animals. And when you carry the skin of another, you make yourself almost more entire. By taking the skin, you enhance your own identity. So you've seen societies over the years when people carry skins, or human beings carry the skin of another animal. So when I give the hyena the skin of a goat, I do something else. And the hyena then looks at back to virus again. Through there, in the other room, you have again Solarium Series, it's the tree. But if anyone has any questions, maybe, or I go back to some early works I show you, and I do this quite quickly. Shall I, what would you like? Should I carry on, or would you like to ask questions now, or how would you like to do it?
Yeah, my name is Gagan.
Hi.
It's just a quick question. I noticed you using the bindi a lot, but what's the sperm bindi, and how did that come about?
The sperm, can you hear me? Okay. The Saab bindi, or the sperm bindi, came, I think it was one of the first, in terms of how, when I started using the bindis, I actually started using them from this, because I discovered them in a marketplace. I thought it was inherently funny. To be totally honest, I thought it was inherently ironic and very funny that a woman would put a sperm on her head, actually. So this actually is the first work I made. It's called Spit and Swallow, and it's a diptych in and out, and I made that in 1996. And when I made the first work, I actually didn't do anything else for maybe 2 or 3 years, but it was in my sketchbook all the time, and I just kept looking at it thinking, there's just something that, you know, I totally appreciate the fact that the bindis have this amazing power of the visual aesthetic, and there's no way that I'm going to deny it, and I saw it from the very first day, and I'm thinking these things just look absolutely stunningly beautiful, and they're doing the most amazing things with your eyes. What if I started just covering, say, an object or a three-dimensional? And it was really, I mean, I was trained as a painter, and I painted for 10 years. I still paint, but not as much, but that's when I actually started to move into sculpture, because when I was doing these on two-dimensional surfaces, I enjoyed them, but I was still trying to work out conceptually what they meant, what function they were serving. And I think that over the years, by honestly just pushing and pushing and pushing the medium, one, I turned them into their own, I gave them their own narrative. You allow them to function with their original intention as well, which is, for me, a conceptual underpinning of that marks time. It marks a day in the life of one person. It marks the way that you can say, today I see you differently, I walk here, I did this, I saw this. It's almost like a residue. It's a residue of the leftover day, so it's a witness. So there's many things, and so those things come after a period of actually working through the medium. But yes, that's how I started. It was a chance. You see something, you take it, you play with it, you push it, and that's it. Okay, so Spit and Swallow. Yeah, spit. These are 4x4 feet. And this is a detail. I don't think I have the other one. This is a diptych. This is the very first bindi work that I made. And so I went off into the old city and bought all the packets that I could find. And I mean, that's pretty much how I started making these works. And at the time, your work, over a period of time, your work changes, the intention of your work changes. So, when I was looking at these, I was looking at them as a ready-made object, with its own inherent value as a ready-made object. The irony of the piece, the parody of the piece, the paradox of the piece, masculine, feminine at the same time. For me, it was quite perfect for somebody like me, because my work has always been talking about duality. So somehow, maybe, I saw it. I wanted to use it. This piece was made in 2002. It's called You Are What You See. It was made for a space in Bangkok. And this was really the first sculpture that I've ever made. And you can see what it is. They're 2 street dogs. And this carpet, very bad picture, I'm sorry, but it's a 5-meter carpet, and it's all up sperm bindis made like a tapestry, and just really enjoying and starting with this material and really enjoying and seeing what it can do, and actually understanding that there is this huge thing of the labor, the hand, this idea of kind of feminine tapestry, weaving, sewing, and actually just looking at surface. But also, you know, you have the two street dogs next to the beautiful carpet. I've actually made a painting very similar to this, but I haven't shown it. I haven't got it for you. Then after that, immediately, I mean, within a space of 2 years, I started making sculpture very quickly. And it really is, once I get hold of something, then I just run with it. Rudolph and Bambi. Rudolph, you know, is the red one, and Bambi's actually a boy. So that's, you know, a lot of my, I'm interested in titles. Titles can be really great. They can also be very funny, and they can also be poignant. They can talk about text, literature, poetry. But so when I made this work, I was, you know, I was like, and it was like, oh, how sweet, male and female. I was, no, they're two boys. And Rudolph, and also going back to me, myself, my own sense of, maybe in a sense of unbelonging, no? So when you move to a country and you're not so familiar with the sound and even the language, I mean, my language skills were not so great then, and you're kind of desperately flapping around trying to dance in tune, and you're dancing and you're singing out of sync, and you're not kind of getting anything right. So if you can then use that off sync, if you can use that off beat to kind of and take that edge, then maybe some things come out. So these were the works that were the first really series of sculptures that I made. Then the three vultures. I'm showing you now just a very select, very few slides of early works, not by any means everything, just to show you, and maybe so that you see where later the works sort of come from. The first elephant that I made, because I didn't have the space or even the know-how how to make a full-size one. But when I made this baby, I always knew that I was going to make a full-size, maybe make its mother one day. This is called I've Seen an Elephant Fly. In the middle of the jungle. Belladonna. So 2003 or 4, looking at the mirror, looking at the idea of the self. Belladonna being there is a myth that there was a Greek goddess. Her name was Belladonna, and she obviously she was like the deadly nightshade. But at that point where you just leave a room and you turn around and you look at yourself just once before you leave that room, it's almost like a ghost. It's almost like that person is here and then they're gone. So that's what it's like the leftover. This was the first kind of what I called leftover from a scene piece of work that I made in stainless steel. The saris are 6 meters of stainless steel folded. Virus, small, 4 by 4 feet, first piece that I made. All sheep are not the same. Mother of anything possible, anytime. So when the bindis start to scale up here, this is when they start to get, the work start to get bigger, because I want to have this sense of that you really feel like you're in When you stand in front of the work, it's actually bigger than you. You get this sense of your own self. These are all made on aluminium composite panel, which means you can just slightly see yourself in the background. So these are all kind of the first mirror works. These are 8 foot by 4 foot each. Landscape. These are actually arrows. Let's go. Can you see? No, no detail, sorry. They're arrows. When the tiger emerges from the jungle, no one cares to ask whether it's male or female. Taken from Persian text. I can't remember what this is called. It doesn't matter. What's it called? Love letter. These are a little bit later now. Going back to the sculptures, this is the girl with the hairy lips said no. Basically, so what this is there's two people in a room, or there's lots of people in the room, and they come to see the girl, and they say, no, we don't like her, she's got a moustache. So she throws the teacup on the floor and walks away. There's it's really like my really bad jokes giving myself. This is installation view, Gallery Ski, 2005, 4, 6, 5. Hungry dogs eat dirty pudding on the left. You know, so you get that continuous, the vacuum, the domestic appliance pieces that turn into something else. They're hybridized. You've got on the right there imposter. The two monkeys are. Hungry dogs eat dirty pudding. It's like the folly. Again, there's a lot of follies in my work, impossibilities, improbabilities, unnecessary works that I make, but they're kind of strangely, I don't know why, I just feel like they're two, you know, the two vacuum cleaners that really have no purpose and no function. With, again, the skin that gives them the power of the other, of something else. Imposter. The wise one. So I've used apes, monkeys, I've used heads of Lucy, the Neanderthal man. It's all alluding to anthropology, to the beginning of time, to who we are, the study of man. I think if I hadn't probably been an artist, I probably would have been an anthropologist or something, because it's something. And here you've got the wise one. He's wearing the rings on all his fingers, because. Yeah, he has ye of little faith, I am. The hybrid series photographs made in 2004, family portrait. Angel. The hunter and the prophet. The hyena. The hyena, this piece of meat down at the bottom, I know I know loads of very random things about animals, because I'm really interested in kind of, maybe because they don't speak, and that's why you see the title, learning to speak languages that you don't really understand, all this. So the hyena is said to have the prophecy of wisdom, and if you were to take out its eyeball and put it under your tongue, you would then you would be able to see into the future. I don't know where that came from, don't ask me. Chocolate muffin. Feather duster. Arione, the first hybrid sculpture, made in 2004. She's kind of insanely ugly, but really quite beautiful at the same time. So I was trying very hard to make someone who was both attractive and repulsive in the same way, but with the body of like an Amazonian. And she stands in the domestic space almost ready to go out to fight battle, but first she's got to make sure the guests have had their cakes. Or the Great Indian Rope Trick. This is in a space in Bombay. Again, Strange Encounters, another piece. 2 cups and 9 samosas. Leftover stuff is, again, you get this sense that something is left that you've just maybe just missed, and the tea is left over. Arione's sister. So a lot of the women that I made are all related somehow. They're sisters, sister-in-laws, friends. So this is her sister. She's she's flying. She's like an angel. Hero Moon. I don't know what this is called. These are back to the panel pieces, some newer works. I write your name. When now all the bindis start to function, they're working like text now. So I'm writing letters. I write your name in white. Sweet Violet's Deathly Kiss. I finish with Echo. These 2 works were made very early in maybe 2000 on a residency. It's a pair of chairs that look out into the landscape, and they're 6 feet off the ground, so you have to work really hard to get onto them. They're sea prints. Thank you.
What a huge body of work, a lot of thought, a lot of foresight having gone into it. It's not a fluke. As many tend to think that all modern art is maybe somebody's mistake, somebody's probably spilled over some color somewhere, that's how it comes about. It's not that, which we have witnessed right in front of us, how ideas develop and take shape and form and concrete, forms, volumes, and they express. Thank you so much once again, Bharti.